What is up, podheads? Back with another episode of the Podioslave podcast. Back in the saddle with the three of us. I'm Tony. I'm joined by Nate. I'm joined by Anthony. And we're back doing what we love, guys. This is what we just talked about for the first 15 minutes before we hit the record button. Let's get back to basics and talk about the music we love. What's going on, boys?
So hold up. Back implies that you left. Did you ever leave?
No, but let's take more joy in this. And that's what and not that we weren't having fun. We've had a blast with pretty much everybody we've talked to, but it was time to do one for us again. And this is what this is.
One for the boys.
You're playing arenas. You want to get back to the clubs, do a club run?
Exactly. $2 bill tour, y'all.
I'm an alum of the Dollar Bill Tour, as is Nate, right? We talked about this. Blink-182, Bubba Sparks. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. $2.
Not
What was that,
me.
Avalon?
It's the Avalon. Where were you down? You were...
I didn't get the invite from you guys. I don't know where I was.
Actually, I didn't pay for my ticket. Someone else got it for me.
You were at school, right? We were in college at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was probably just sitting in my bedroom in Maine. Sad that all my friends were at concerts without me.
By the way, $2 with inflation is $49.
Yeah. And then you tack on all those fees too. But
So I took us on a tangent. You asked how we're doing. I'm doing great. Nate, how you doing?
I'm doing good. It's always nice to geek out and just do some serious nerd homework. It kind of brings us back to like high school days, college days. Like you're cramming, but you're stretching it out. But then you like think you're not prepared, so then you kind of cram more, and then like you start listening or checking out different things that you know. Oh, that'll definitely be on the test. I need to know that. Fuck, why was I wasting my time on this other shit? That's how I am. I'm like, big episode.
This is a low stress environment. This shouldn't be stressful, my friend.
Oh, it's good stress though. It's good stress.
Yeah. The analogy king is back, ladies and gentlemen. Nate with the college. We're going back to school. We have to cram for the test. Tonight we're gonna talk a little Soundgarden, Superunknown, which turned 30 a couple months ago now. But first, I do want to throw something at you, Nate. I have a question for you because if people pay attention to our social media, they may have seen a story or a post that was put up the other day. You ran into another member of Rage Against the Machine. You met Tim Comerford.
This fucking guy.
Yeah, so you're down to just needing to find Zach De La Rocca and his running club to get all four of them. But you met Tim Comerford. How'd that go, man? How'd that happen? Take us through it.
Oh man, so being as we are now adults, old, going to shows isn't always a luxury we have. But yeah, man, I want to meet these guys. I want to talk. I want to geek out. That has not changed. Nothing has changed in that realm of sometimes I just want to kick can with these guys, and like, you know, getting someone from Rage on the pod is a far stretch. So if I can just chat with one of them, cool. So Tim, his new band 7D, not to be confused with Seven Dust, played a matinee show in Long Beach on a few Sundays ago. Yeah, or Sunday ago, whatever. And band was like not even headlining. And I was like, sweet. So I went to the show, checked it out. It was like a 2 p.m. show, got a beer, hung out, and talked to Tim outside, talked about mountain bikes, talked about a lot of random stuff. Believe it or not, try to keep it casual for a while until kind of circling back to Rage, obviously. But yeah, you know, the luxury of living in Southern California.
Hold on. I'm not letting you off the hook. What did you talk about Rage?
I tried to keep it light because it's I feel like, and this is again, I think we're all kind of empathetic nerds. It's a sensitive subject given that I think Brad, the drummer, had recently outed the fact that they're never going to tour again.
Yeah,
and and so I didn't want to. I treaded very lightly, but I did grab a poster or two posters to get signed. So that was what kind of sparked that. Like, oh, this poster I had on my wall from like 1998 to like 2003 in my bedroom, and the old one had rivets in it from my wall that kind of had this weird wood rivet thing going on, and it got destroyed. So I'm kind of getting it re-signed by you guys, and he's like, oh, that's a rad story, and just geeking out on that. And then another one, which was the live at the Grand Olympic Auditorium in LA, kind of this cool black and white poster, and just riffing really quickly on that, like, oh yeah, we thought that was our last show, and blah blah blah. But there's like huge parts of me that wanted to be like, so what's really going on, man? Like, what the fuck happened?
Right.
But I can't do that. So
I wouldn't have. Like, I know me, I would have got nervous. I wouldn't have.
Yeah.
But you're the wild card, my friend. You could have got it out of him.
I did get some intel from Stephen Carpenter on the Deftones drama 2 months before that dropped, so I could have, but he told me that, right? I didn't inquire, so I felt like that was more natural for me to inquire on this, especially after the news has been out from Brad kind of getting it out of its cage in terms of the band breaking up again for like the fifth time. I was like, I'll keep this super basic. And dude, stoked to see you. Stoked to see your band. Stoked to talk about mountain biking. And cool. Cheers. All right. See you soon.
Did you pitch the pod?
I didn't pitch the pod.
That's okay.
But there's a but there. I exchanged information to help promote their band, in which case I have, that kind of managerial level. Hey, let's keep in touch. Let's make this happen. Let's play some shows in San Diego. You seem to have kind of a hookup in that live venue scene there. So we'd like to play shows there because I was wearing my laminate. And so, yeah, in other words, yes and no. No out front, but I'm definitely it's a long play. We'll put it that way.
It's always a long play. That's the best part about having Nate around, is that you just never know when that connection or that random chance encounter that isn't all that chance. Like, oh, I just so happen to have this poster with me, bro. You want to sign it? I love it.
That happens, but sometimes I'm at a playground with my son, and Melvin from NoFX is there. I mean, just shit happens, dude.
Yeah, no, it's that is SoCal. That is the cheat code of SoCal compared to where Anthony and I currently reside. And I love that story just because you sent the photo and I was like, are you fucking kidding me, bro? Like, how do you pull this off? I should know better at this point. I've known you for more than half of my life, close to 30 years at this point. I should definitely know. If anybody's going to randomly run into Tim Comerford in a parking lot, it's going to be Nate.
What is it? Luck is when preparation and opportunity meet, right?
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. So it's not luck at all. It's pre-planned.
Yeah, and he's done all the homework too. It's not like you've been nerding out. We've been nerding out about music, in a public forum for 4+ years, but we've been doing it forever. So
yeah, there is one thing about that show that I was kind of anticipating, which didn't come to fruition, which is Tim had other solo bands that are side projects that he had worked with, where other band members from Rage had showed up. Tom Morello being one, and Zach being another. And I think Brad at other shows or whatever, but one in particular, Chris Cornell, Zach, and Tom Morello all showed up for like his, again, like 200-person show. So I was looking through the crowd, scanning, like, these guys got to be here. I'm not Cornell, obviously. And I thought I was staring at this guy forever. I'm like, that's fucking Zach right there. Up until like the last 3 seconds, I'm like, oh no, that's not him. But it looked exactly like him. Like, had a sweatshirt on, was super incognito, wearing all black. And just staring at him, like dead set. I'm like, and then Tim talks about a story about him and Rage, like telling stories and doing some warm up shit before Rage gigs back in the day in club settings similar to that, like small cap room. And then he looked at that guy, so I'm like, that's definitely Zach. And I kind of half approached him just to kind of get a better look, and like that was all it took. I'm like, oh, it's not him, but I could have sworn it was. But anyways, that's just a little side tangent that I was hoping to get a few more of the guys.
Yeah, no, well, that's a fun story, and I'm now going to clip this and put it on YouTube like I did with when you ran into Brad Wilk at that Whole Foods like 4 years ago, and we'll see it go nuts on YouTube because Nate just randomly runs into Rage members every now and then.
So Nate, you mentioned Cornell in that story, and this next album we're talking about is an important one. I know, Nate. Soundgarden for you holds it's a special band that holds a special place for you, and I'm shocked we haven't talked about them. Have we on this podcast?
In passing, songs maybe.
In passing, and are they a top 3 for you band?
Definitely.
So I'm shocked you never lobbied for them over the last 4 years to do an episode.
I'm happy you brought this up actually, in that kind of delivery, because there is a reason behind that.
I'd love to hear it.
I think, and it's weird, especially revisiting this album for this episode, it's in my top 3 favorite records, favorite bands, favorite vocalists, favorite songwriters. And there's this weird part of me that like purposely doesn't listen to this record that often to kind of preserve its greatness, because I just don't want to like wear it out. And there's mystique about the record, about the band and Cornell and their legacy that's just not so publicized as like the Nirvanas and Pearl Jams of the world. And then with the podcast, it's such a deep record and band that it's like, it's almost like I'd say it'd be maybe premature to focus on something like this early on. And now when you guys are like, reached out and said, hey, let's do a deep dive. I'm like, oh, well, here's one but it's like a Beethoven-esque. You're gonna have to really do some research, or not. It can be casual too, but it's not as easy as just flipping through some articles. It's more than that, because there's just so much going on. And then Cornell, as a vocalist, is such an incredible vocalist that it's just harder to really hone in, and it's a big task, even for me as a giant fan. And I think that's the reason why it's been kind of on this dusty shelf. Like, eventually we'll get to that one, but man, it's going to take a lot. And if it's going to be one we're going to talk about, it's got to be worthy. And I think time allows that to happen, and that's why we're here today.
Yeah, I mean, there's records that you put on a pedestal that, I mean, we've talked about it, Tony. You stay away from it. You want to make sure when it happens, you do it right, and it has to be the right time. And we're at 30 years of Superunknown. I mean, we're not going to wait till 40 years, so I think now is the time.
You're right. We're not waiting till 40. This is a great time. This is a great record. It's one that I think might be overlooked at this point, because it's in that 30 world where I think a lot of times people are looking at 20 years or 25 years. Or this is one of those. And 1994 was a stacked year for music, and this record, right at the end of the first quarter in March of 1994, and has just banger after banger on it, and kind of changes styles a couple different times. And you're right, Nate, you got to do a little homework to like really get the full grasp of what they were trying to go for. And they were always kind of that way, I think, of the grunge bands, of the big four, your Alice in Chains, your Soundgarden, your Nirvana, your Pearl Jam. I think you had to spend the most time paying attention to what Soundgarden was doing. With the others, I think you could just kind of plug and play and be like, this is amazing. I don't need to. You do need to put some effort into having it mean something, but Soundgarden for me always felt like there was more there, and you could just keep listening and find more.
I think it's a really accurate assessment of the band. In fact, when you kind of think about the big four in grunge, there's an easy separation of like Nirvana and Pearl Jam. Some of those songs are less depressing. Some are actually super inspiring. They're more marketable. And then you got Alice in Chains and Soundgarden, which is like such heavy subject matter, complex landscapes, and just full on grunge. Like there's not even like Eddie Vedder and Chris Cornell, are both coming up in the same era and marketable in terms of who they are and how they look and their voice and range and everything. But there is a separation, I think, like because Lane and Cornell are talking about things that are so dark. Not that Kurt and Eddie were not, but I don't know. I just feel like there's a kind of thin red line between the four and where you kind of separate those. And I think what you're saying in that last part is you discover more and more, and it's harder because it's not just plug it in and it's casual. It's deeper than that for a lot of reasons.
Was this era Soundgarden your exposure? It was for me. Black Hole Sun was the first time I ever heard.
Me too. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it was on MTV. It was
a
wild video.
Yeah,
Weird.
video.
Yeah, wild fucking weird video. And you were drawn in, and I was actually thinking about it today. The visuals of the video almost took away from the song. Like, it was almost a soundtrack to the music video, and you almost get lost in the song. And for a song that's been out that long, like 30 years, it hasn't lost its luster. And I think it's because it accompanied the video. It wasn't like, we talked about Offspring a few weeks ago. It wasn't like that being jammed down your throat from the radio. This was like, it accompanied a video and it still preserved the greatness of the song.
Yeah, I would agree. And that song alone being my first kind of interaction with the band is seeing an MTV, seeing a video. Actually, my parents, we talked about this with Todd Mackey. I grew up, my parents got divorced when I was pretty young, and I remember my mom, she had a boyfriend for a while, and he had young kids or kids my age, so we would watch MTV together, we would play Nintendo together, we would listen to CDs together. So this was one of those first memories of Soundgarden, was seeing this video at their house while we were just hanging out, like, oh, who is this band? Like, it's heavy without you realizing it's heavy. It's got kind of a daydreamy guitar lick to start, and you're just like, whoa, what is that? And then it's like it comes at you, and the video is super weird, and it also looked kind of bright and shiny, and then you peel back the layers and find out it's not. So it was, a 10-year-old me is like, holy shit, who are these guys, and how do I get more of it? Inject it into my veins, type of deal. So yeah, cool record, cool song to kind of kick off my fandom. Nate, was this the first exposure for you too? This song?
Yes, it was initially. It's an interesting thing though, because I think, like you said, '94 was such a banging year. There was so much happening, and given what we were just talking about earlier, it was harder to grasp. So it's easier to go for the dookies and things that are a little bit more upfront and easy to digest than a Soundgarden Superunknown, where even like the cover art is just so, I don't know, it's pretty confusing. You know, like what is that cover? It's blurry. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Whereas like, and I said Dookie, I'm looking at your poster on the wall. There's so much going on. It's like a comic book. Like I'm a kid. Like this is awesome. I can get into this, and all the music's fucking fast paced, and this is red. Soundgarden's like fell on black days. You know what I mean? With like a black cover of like this like blurry photo, and so yes and no. I say because I initially did get into them, but it was very casual. It wasn't until later, which we'll kind of get into, that I really like got into the record in its entirety and was like, holy crap, I can't believe I would just pop this in, skip a few songs, play like that one song, and then pop it out and put a different CD in the Discman, where it's like I really finally like listened to it front to back and was like, oh, like I had to understand that this isn't just a casual, like we said, not a casual listen. This is a very deep study album.
Well, you said a word earlier. It was mystique. I mean, you come at me with Superunknown, Black Hole Sun, that fucking video as a 9-year-old or 8-year-old. And it was like the video, they have like the wide eyes and I actually didn't listen. I didn't watch it. That's like core memory, like embedded in my skull. It was a mystique there. And like Cornell shines, but like kind of not really in that,
right.
You know, like he it's like a low key flex. If you listen back, it like wasn't even, I wonder like what the band thinks of that song. Like, I don't, do you guys know?
I don't know. Nate, do you?
What do you think of that song on a personal level?
Just in general. How do they feel about how big that song was? And
like, do they look at it as a single, or was that like, you know, a true artistic moment for them? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure 100%. I feel like there's different opinions probably within the band, the members that are still with us. It's a great point.
Yeah, that you're right. That there's a kind of, I feel like the whole record, there's a kind of subdued nature to some of Cornell's vocals, as good as they are. And we love Cornell. We named our podcast after a band that he was in. You know, like we're big fans of what Chris Cornell did as a vocalist over the course of his illustrious career before passing years back. But I do think that he flexes in spots, and I wrote it down in a couple songs, and we'll get to that in a bit, I think. But there are some times where you're just like, you take for granted, especially 30 years out, how amazing he sounded, and how amazing Kim's guitar playing is, and how amazing Ben Shepherd's bass and Matt Cameron's drums are together, and then separately when they're all kind of getting their shine. They all have spots where they just really blow you away on this record, but it is a little like, you gotta be listening for it, I think, with this record.
I do know that, to your point, Twan, that what I read at least is actually, I think it was him saying it verbally, which I found some cool stuff on Cornell, like talking about the record, interviewed on this record in particular and how they recorded it. So it's like legitimate because it's coming from his mouth, which is the band would all write separately, individually, and then bring these things to the table. And Cornell would listen to whatever these people brought to the table in the band and then write music, lyrics, and vocals to kind of form around that music, which I think is super cool because we're all big like shoegaze fans. And sometimes like I listen to shoegaze type era music or whatever, or even instrumental type music in that realm. And I can start to almost like make a cool little like storyline with my own life, given that like soundscape. And I think that's what he was doing, and what he was trying to say in that interview, which is, I mean, he can write about like literally anything, you know. But if like Kim is bringing in this sludgy guitar riff, your mood is gonna like drastically change direction and probably find some memory from who knows when, and you can all of a sudden like blossom this song, which I thought was like super cool because that's like the ultimate collaborative effort. And if everyone's kind of like putting their little thing on it, it's not even coming from like, oh, I should like do it that way or we should do it this way. It's like, no, dude, I wrote this in my garage. What did you do? I did this in my basement. Cool. Let's listen and then react. And I thought that was like super fucking cool. And it makes total sense for this record.
So who we talked about Cornell's vocals. Who do you guys think he's pulling from in this era? Because I was thinking about it. The only thing I could, again, context is key. It's 1994. The only thing I can think of is like Zeppelin and Plant. Like that's the only that's the only place my head goes.
Yeah. There's probably some people in the 80s too that we're not even thinking of that he got a little bit from too, but they started in the 80s. So those would have been, contemporary-ish bands.
That's a good point.
Sound-wise, I in listening to it to prep for this, it was like I heard where Queens of the Stone Age got some riffs and sounds and vibes, and then I was like, Caius is from that time too, from the early Caius and Soundgarden a little earlier, but they started around the same time, and Caius is what Queens was before Queens, right? So there's certainly some like, did you get some chocolate in my peanut butter with those bands? And there's a lot of sounds that are very similar, but like different enough. And I loved that. Like, oh, I like that there. I didn't realize it came from that spot type of feeling that I got listening back to this. And did it come from them or did they get it from the previous iteration of band before? My mind was in a pretzel with that, but it was cool to kind of think of it through that lens today.
Yeah, great question. I think the Robert Plant reference is very accurate. Whether it's intentional or not, I have no idea, but they definitely both have that range, which is such a rare thing. Like no one can sing
the
like
range
that.
and the ability to belt it out. Like that's really what it came from. But I think Cornell goes, you said a word, Tony, subdued. He goes more subdued. And in a weird way, it's just as emotional and hits you in the same way.
Absolutely. Yeah. Subdued is not the right word for it, I guess. It is the right word for it because it's
I knew what you're talking about. I had the same thought.
Yeah, but it like if you listen to the record, you're like, oh man, he's not pulling back, but he's giving it to us in a way that fits the song and fits what they're trying to pull off. And this record, I think, is as a whole, it's that way throughout. And there are spots where they go kind of fast-paced and punky. There are spots where they go super doom sludge. And there are spots where they're poppy and kind of, in that more, this is going to get played on the radio. And they all work and they all have that vibe, I think.
Yeah, it's incredible. I can't really think of a whole lot of other lyricists that he might be pulling from. Maybe Ozzy with like the Black Sabbath era, especially with the heavy metal thing going on. But it's hard to say. Like you said, Cornell's got such range that even his kind of monotone singing voice that eventually transcends into this like you said, belting out Robert Plant thing and then back down. Yeah, it's crazy to think how he's even doing that, let alone, I mean, I guess it's back to that point of I'm molding this song to sound to go with the music. And so whatever that takes is where I'm going to go. But to even have the ability to do it is a whole different thing.
So yeah, let's dig into some tracks, some songs that we all really dig for whatever reason, whether it be vocals or drums or whatever. So Nate, what are some of your favorite tracks? Give us 2 or 3 and reasons why.
Man, so I wrote key tracks down, and then I kind of wrote a whole other set of notes, as I was alluding to earlier, just like almost double down on different things and kind of doing a track by track as well. But ones that initially just like gun to head, like write them down. Let's see. Day I Tried to Live, Fresh Tendrils, Let Me Drown, Superunknown. I guess I wrote 6, Black Hole Sun, and My Wave. So like a top 6.
So the whole album. The whole you love the whole album. That's the reason why we're talking about.
It's like I'm getting 6 in, bitch.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard because like that range is, I mean, My Wave to Let Me Drown are like completely different bands. So
that's a good point. The start of the record to right into My Wave, it's a different, like you're in a different world. You're like, I love the start of Let Me Drown and like the vibe that it kicks off with. It's like you're gonna get all of these things coming up here. Some of it's gonna be kind of quick, some of it's gonna be kind of slow, and we're gonna be tight. It's gonna sound good, and then you jump into My Wave, which is one of my favorite songs too. So I'm with you there.
Yeah, Let Me Drown. It sets that opening riff sets the tone for the album. Yeah. Like as I'm thinking about it, like that's And when I was listening back in prep for this, it's a tone setter.
So
Yeah.
I think I loved all those songs, Nate. I Fell on Black Days is obviously a big one. The Day I Try to Live might be my favorite Soundgarden song. If it's not my favorite, it's up there. It's a top 3 Soundgarden song. It's just, especially when he belts out The Day I Try to Live, and just it's so good. And the vibe, the feeling. If you're driving in the car when that comes on, you're gonna scream that with him, and not nearly as well as he does. And be happy that you did. And it's just such a cool track. And like Suicide is the band, everybody gets to play. Everybody gets a moment to shine in that song. It's the album closer, right? And the way that they bring the groove back together is seamless after they've all had a turn to kind of show you what they can do and how it's going to sound. And I love that track because of that, how it's able to give you really what all of them can do, and then what all of them can do together.
Wow, great point, dude. That's like, it's basically
7 minutes too, right?
That's like god damn, I haven't thought about it that way, but that's like Led Zeppelin's No Quarter. Just fucking just out there, but everyone gets to shine. Great point.
You guys know my music interest and style and what I groove out to. What do you think my top tracks are on this album?
You like Mailman.
I fucking love Mailman.
Mailman would be my A1 for you, and then
sludgy.
Yeah.
Of the sludgiest of the sludge. And then when he says, like, I know I'm headed for the bottom, you can feel every syllable of that. Yeah, 1 for 1.
Yeah, Mailman's a big one.
Head Down.
So actually, there's 4. I'm gonna break the rules here. What did you say? Head Down? That's not one of them.
Nick gave 6, so you can give 4.
I'll give you. I mean, one of them is
Kickstand.
That's an honorable mention. I love like the punky vibe to that.
Yeah.
Black Hole Sun is one of them. So, I know it's been played and whatever, but it still holds up. But there's really 2 more that are all time for me.
Fell on Black Days.
Fell on Black Days. Yeah, all time song. Cornell's melodies just they take you on a journey. Can't get enough still. And there's one more that, again, it's me. Like it's me. It's later in the album.
4th of July.
4th of July.
Oh, nice.
It's so, again, heavy, sludgy. And Cornell's vocals, I'm not saying they sound like Maynard, but they complement the music in a way that Maynard complements Tool. It sounds like, what, a 4th instrument?
Yeah.
And I love it. 4th of July is all time.
Yeah, and that's got that kind of sludgy guitar tone too, which, I mean, think about what came after this record, and who pulled from this as a reference point to make their sludgy doom metal band. Like, so many bands.
Oh, so many.
All right, I'm gonna shout out a couple of our social media friends that also tossed us a few. Nick McCormick had Kickstand. Seth from Trawl had Fell on Black Days. Marty from Sparks, which we just had them last week, tossed Beyond the Wheel from the Super Deluxe, which is the live version of that song from Ultra Mega OK. That is sludgy, heavy, amazing Cornell performance, especially live. Go listen to that if you haven't. I listened to it a couple times after he DM'd us that today. So, and then Punkish Dad tossed us Kickstand, and I think State Theater, our friends at the State Theater, tossed us a couple as well, or tossed us one as well. Limo Wreck, and then we got Let Me Drown from Pat, and My Wave from me, just because I was getting some engagement farming on our Instagram today. So yeah, why not?
Nate, where was your reply? Were you saving it for the pod, as we say?
Lost
Exactly.
in translation.
Saving it for the pod. Exactly.
But yeah, the cool thing about this record, and it coming from a bunch of different people today, and us as well, is that there is a bunch of things for you there. There's a bunch of songs to gravitate towards depending on what you're looking for, and they pull them off all really well. And, in the grunge world, but you get the sludgy stuff, you get the punk stuff, you get the fast stuff, you get the slow stuff, you get the Cornell, giving you the vocal stuff. It's just an amazing piece of music.
What's so fascinating to me when I think about like these legacy bands in the moment is like how big they got, and they deserved all of it. Like that's not where I'm going with this, but I looked at the tour that they were on in 1994, and they were playing I looked up the Mesa Amphitheater was like 4,000 people. Then another venue on that same tour was like 7,000. Like these are big rooms, huge rooms, and like to have them play like 4th of July, like I don't know, I can't think of like what's the equivalent now. That's where my head was going. Like there, I don't know if there is an equivalent. Like in guitar loud music, it's a bunch of legacy stuff. Where like this band was in the moment, writing their best shit then and there, you know.
That's a great point, and I think that of that sometimes when listening to something new or a band that I think has like gotten to the point where they're not necessarily where Soundgarden was in 1994, but ascending, and you're like, how does this fit in their legacy? Like, who's going to be talking to them in 20 years about that time?
Yeah.
I want to know.
You're a nerd. You're a nerd.
Yeah. Well, totally. And it crosses my mind, like, are they playing that song that I love off that record, like 4th of July, live to people who are like, what the fuck is this? Because it does happen.
You get civilians at that level. You get the civilians. You
exactly.
know?
You're playing those big rooms. You're going to, and you're not necessarily a legacy act at that point. They've been around for a little while in '94, but they're not what they are today, or what they would have been in 2010, whenever they came back, 2012, right? So crazy to think that this was playing those rooms and how they got to that point, being what they were as a band.
I mean, man, that just took me for a trip just because, you know, we're all venue geeks. But the interesting thing is this is the album that really, you know, where the band really took off. So like they were writing this record when they were playing rooms fraction of that size. And you can kind of hear it in the music. So actually, when you were talking about that, it's like, wow, yeah, like Suicide in these songs, like it's supposed to be almost like a club setting record, not like a fucking arena type record. Not that it doesn't translate, because it can translate in pretty much any venue. It can translate in a fucking stadium. It doesn't matter because it's so instrumental. But I think the reason why it translates so well is the band had got out, and they had been around, like you said, since the 80s, but they had just gotten off Lollapalooza in 92. And the notes that I wrote down, I think, yeah, 2 weeks later, after they got off Lollapalooza 92, they started writing and recording this record. So they had played bigger crowds. So I can kind of see that translation where before playing Lollapalooza 92, we'd have to do some digging, but I don't think they were playing rooms even a quarter of that size. So they were in the framework of, let's play some music that really fills the room, and holy shit, let's play Lollapalooza. Okay, let's go back. We got to somehow do both. And maybe that's how it took off. Maybe not. Like we always talk about, like, were you expecting this success with bands we interview? And they're like, no, not at all. We thought we were going to play 250 cap rooms all day. And then we blew up. And now that we're playing this record that we thought we were playing basements at arenas, you know, it's a cool point. And it's a cool, like, nerd geek point that you found out, like, what kind of venues they're playing. Cause, you know, I wouldn't want to see Soundgarden play this record at the Cumberland County Civic Center, no shit on it, but I would rather see this at a state theater because that's where these sounds really translate in, like a 1920s Art Deco wood carved for the perfect acoustics type record. So, I mean, it must have been a trip for the band.
Well, the tricky thing is like we were so young in this era. I don't know that, like, I personally do not have a good grasp of how big they got on Bad Motorfinger. I don't know. Like, Outshined, I didn't know it in the moment. I knew it after. Ultra Mega OK, that got a Grammy nomination. You know what I mean? So they were
making noise, right?
They were making noise. Although Ultra Mega was on SST, so, you know, how big could it have gotten? I don't know. But do you think they sacrificed anything with Superunknown?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think they did.
No, I don't think so either. I don't think they could have even known to think to do that, really. You know? I think what happened is it's 94 now, and now this whole thing that was just a Seattle scene, think of us as being from the greater Portland, Maine area, and all of a sudden that scene that we grew up with, seeing bands like Rustic, was like, yeah, cool, they're playing again, awesome, you want to go? I saw them last week, but yeah, I'll go see them again. But that's like Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, Mudhoney. It's all these bands, but they'd have a scene, and now that scene is, like you said, we talked about, is MTV. So now, like, everyone sees that, and so there's a reason why that's catapulted to the front, because it's like, here's a great product distributed to the masses instead of like a local scene that, like, yeah, dude, I'm gonna go kick it with Cornell later. Do you want to see his band play? Sure. To like, oh my God, they're signed. Oh my God, they're fucking playing Lollapalooza, and now they're playing stadiums. Like it's a very quasi natural progression, but we weren't part of that scene. But
Nate, I also don't think there was a blueprint for that because like
yeah,
they weren't a hair metal band, so you weren't going to go
Right.
ultra
No.
corny,
mhm,
And
exactly.
I mean, Nevermind was before this, so you knew the ceiling, but I don't think there was a, even with Black Hole Sun, I don't think there was a sacrifice of creativeness.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't think they ever did that. Just as a band and listening to them over the years, and when they came back, and when we seen them live in 2013, and I don't think they ever sacrificed what they wanted to do as a band to get whatever. They were just gonna do what they did, and if people were cool with it, they'd come and listen, or they'd buy the record, and people were cool with it, and they came and listened and bought the record.
Yeah, I think the subject matter is too deep to make it that marketable to be like, hey, there's a track like Suicide. Like you're not expecting to go platinum, right? Like this might sell, and it happened to sell because it's great music. But at the end of the day, like
Right.
I don't think that even the band was thinking this is going to be some massive success, even off the bookends of a band like Nirvana that literally changed the game.
So Nate, you brought up seeing these songs in theaters. We saw them at the Orpheum Theater in 2013.
Damn.
How many songs from Superunknown do you think they played? It was a 26 song set.
Damn. Wow. From Superunknown? Jeez.
Yeah. How many?
It's because it's a pretty long record, which is one of the reasons I love it, because it just keeps going. I'm gonna say 7.
Ooh, 8.
Oh wow, nice.
Yeah. So they played. I'll read them to you right now. They played Spoon Man early. They played My Wave, The Day I Tried to Live, Fell on Black Days,
Nice.
Mailman, Head Down, 4th of July, and Black Hole Sun.
Wow.
Yeah. And they closed the regular set with 4th of July, and then Black Hole Sun, and there were 4 songs in the encore, and Black Hole Sun was the second to last song. So they found a way to play the big songs. They found a way to play some of the sludgier, heavier, fun, like ones that we're talking about tonight that are meant to be heard in a building like that. And I mean, what a badass show. I'm so happy we got to go to that.
That was a trip. Yeah, it's interesting, especially talking about where to see the band, the best environment to see the band. Orpheum Theater is a great example of that. It was an interesting night, right? I think we've talked about it on here at least twice with the Red Sox situation. So the crowd was bummed.
The Patriots, yeah, it was during the
Patriots,
the AFC Championship game against the Ravens, and you and I watched the first half while we had dinner, and they were winning, and then people were. This is early, like being able to check scores on your phones, and people were like, not going so well. But the music kind of fits the vibe, so let's just listen to Soundgarden tonight.
Yeah, visually, just imagine seeing a balloon slowly deflating. That's what it felt like.
But they were great. I mean, 26 songs, all kinds of fun stuff. As far as the way they sounded and what they were doing, they were back with that record that came out, King Animal, just prior to this, and they played a few songs off that. They played some stuff off, Blow Up the Outside World and Burden in My Hand and stuff like that. But it was a lot of fun to see them, and I'm glad. It was the only time I ever saw them. Did either of you guys see them any other times?
I never saw them. I mean, I've been to the Orpheum twice. 2,500 cap, old theater vibe, perfect place for a band. And it's funny, like that was a sweet spot where you could pull that off. Like if Soundgarden was still with that group now, 10,000 cap, straight up. Think about it. It was just a sweet spot. You guys nailed it with that one.
Yeah, it was an interesting thing because they had reunited, and I saw I guess it was their second show as a band back. They played a small venue in Chicago, but their first official reunion show was at Lollapalooza 2010, I believe, or maybe it was 2009. I can't remember. And I was so stoked because I remember thinking my lifelong dream was to check off at least all the grunge bands that were still going or had any chance of getting back together off my list. Nirvana obviously was never going to happen. So that left Soundgarden, Alice in Chains until Lane died in 2002. And then it became literally just Soundgarden. But Cornell had been interviewed multiple times on, hey, if you weren't there, I'm sorry, Soundgarden will never get back together. Kind of like Josh Homme with Caius. And I was like, fuck, why? But I get it because the music is so, like I said earlier, I'm putting this on a shelf to get dusty because I don't want to overdo it type thing. So I agreed with Cornell and the fact that keep it sacred, but I was also like, dude, these songs are timeless. Like, you should do it. And he eventually did. So long form answer. I did see them on their reunion when they first got back together. I think just the timing wasn't right in terms of how many people you can pull. Maybe it was like a delayed reunion that they played Lollapalooza as a headliner. But then when they actually played their run of tours, I know a little bit more intel on how they like decide on what kind of venue runs they're going to do. Instead of doing arenas, they went three tiers down and did like a theater run, kind of like Nails actually. When we saw Nine Inch Nails at
on the comeback too, same idea. Yep.
Yeah, where they're like it's really hard to gauge what we're going to get on a return. We don't want to do half sold arenas, so we'll just do larger scale theaters. And if it sells well, we can add a second night, and then we'll really kind of get a good pulse on like what the demand is. So Soundgarden was that. In fact, I don't even think the show we went to, the Orpheum, was sold out. So it was kind of like, oh man, people are really. I think it might be too late. You know what I mean?
Crazy.
Yeah.
And Soundgarden continued to tour off and on. Matt Cameron being the drummer is also the drummer of Pearl Jam, so like his commitments are stretched. So logistically wise, it's a fucking shit show.
Right.
So it was really difficult, I think, to get it right. And then Cornell, everyone has their struggles. Cornell's are pretty well documented. But the rooms, I think if they were around today, it might actually still be in that realm. I don't know. Actually, now that Cornell's gotten so much praise lately, it might have changed. Maybe like a good secondary pause, kind of like Rage Against the Machine, where like, hey, like we're back again. Oh shit, okay, we can play, we can have like Coachella. But I think things can kind of wear out. So the again, like we were talking about earlier, the context with Soundgarden is so deep that it's not just easy grasp. Oh yeah, they're coming to town. Let's go. It's more like, am I in the mood for it?
Right. There's a little of that too. Yeah. Okay, so I asked if either of you guys had seen them. I can't cut whatever Nate just said into a social media clip, so that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Nah, damn. It's a good thing this is a long form, Nate. It's a good thing. No, I'm just messing with you, but you're right. It's it's an undertaking. Putting this record on is an undertaking. Listen to it from start to finish. You need to like be ready for it. You can put it on and listen to the singles passively if you want to, because they're kind of, 30 years in, they're ubiquitous. People know Spoon Man. People know anything that they've done as far as radio rock hits, because they had them. But if you're gonna like dig into the records like we like to do and what we're doing tonight, you gotta like be ready for it for sure. All right, guys. So I have a question about Chris Cornell and his vocal prowess. Obviously, a lot has been made of his ability to, he's one of the best frontmen ever, one of the best vocalists ever. I think we all agree. What do you think is his vocal peak? Is it this record? Or do you think there's another record that kind of showcases him better? I have one that I think is better. That's why I asked this question.
I would say this record showcases his range. And when I say range, most people think extending his vocals, right? When I think range in this context, it's the low end and letting it rip. It's the plant peak. It's the subdued that you hear on like 4th of July, whatever it might be. That range. There's other albums, Audioslave. I think that he showcases what most people think is range, like vocal range. I think you hear more of that. I don't know. That's just top of the head reaction.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of in a similar place. This record I've studied so much that I kind of put it on like this is the one. But obviously, Audioslave like really is just so well refined. In fact, it's almost like this weird, complex story of like the guy almost gave up singing, gave it another shot, and then some of his best work is Audioslave. If anything, it's Superunknown continued. You know what I mean? Not that there weren't records after that. In fact, the records that came after Superunknown are also amazing. And again, long form. To answer your question, I think he had so much in him that had Soundgarden not broken up, it would have been what Audioslave was. In fact, that's why I'm saying no, it's not his peak. Audioslave was his peak, for sure.
And we're saying the first Audioslave record, we all agree, is probably his peak as far as like showcasing what he can do from top to bottom.
Pushing the limit, showcasing what he can do. Yes.
Yeah. I would agree. Yeah. And that would be where I would point. But in doing this tonight, and I had this question locked and loaded for the end of our episode, 3 days ago. I thought to myself, I might be wrong. Because all three of us kind of had similar vibes with this record, which is cool. Because I wasn't sure how you were going to see it, Anthony. You were going to see it, Nate, versus how I was going to see it. But I think we all kind of drew similar conclusions to the way that this record made us all feel. And, listening to it, again, through 30 years of a lens versus when it came out, when we would hear the singles on the radio as kids or on MTV. But I think it's still the first Audioslave record because I think they made a conscious effort to show what he could do, where on Superunknown, he was part of a collective.
I agree. I do agree.
Cool. All right, I think we've exhausted the topic. I think we've had a lot of fun talking about it like we always do. And I can't wait to listen to it again now through the lens of this conversation, because that is always fun after the fact too. It is getting to put the record on again after we've kind of done our thing for an hour and been able to pick each other's brains about a record that we all love and have brought to the table. So excited to do this again, guys, and let's keep doing it, huh?
Nate, next time, and there will be a next time, but you pick the album again because you picked this one. This was your recommendation. It's good rec.
Oh, dude, there's so many dusty records on the shelf that need attention. I will take you up on that. And also for anyone listening, one thing that I did to study for this episode, which is just a cool little game, if you want to try it, not game, but just thing to try, is to listen to this record in sequence. And for every track, just write one or two words, like feelings, like what do you feel? Like, what comes to mind, and write it down. And that was part of my note-taking strategy for this episode. And it's very simplistic, but it really helps you kind of hone in what you're trying to say. And then for you as a listener or anyone that is into music appreciation, like you get a very visceral experience with the record because now it's more personal. It could literally be like we were talking about, like Sludge. I wrote that down on like four of the songs for this record because it is Sludge. And we love like the stuff that came after this record. And then so our brains just go on like steroids. I'm like, oh, well, that's where Quicksand got that from, or that's where Hum got that from. It's like very interconnected in a lot of ways, and it makes you hyper focused on everything that you love about music even more so, in a very simplistic strategy rather than like writing a million notes in a book and you get lost in where you're even trying to like what you're trying to even try to figure out. So keep it simple, and that's just one thing I did. So yeah, again, keep on geeking because that's what we're doing today on the Podioslave podcast.
And maybe someday Nate will tell us what 15 words he came up with.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to Podioslave. We appreciate you. This has been a lot of fun, and I know the three of us will be back doing it again before you know it, and we appreciate anybody that has, come along for the ride at any point. Thank you.
We'll see you next week. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers, nerds.
Hey, peace, botheads. Thank you for listening to Podioslave. We are at Podioslave on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all of the places that you can find us on social media. Facebook, Podioslave Podcast. YouTube, Podioslave Podcast there. Email us at podioslavepodcast@gmail.com. And hey, if you want to become a supporter, click on the link at the bottom of the episode and give us $1, give us $5. It keeps the lights on, keeps us going. We really appreciate that stuff. Thank you.
All right, Black Hole Sun. The instrumentals, take Cornell out of it, instrumentals. Korn had to be influenced by that. Think about it.
Yeah, I had never thought of that.
I had never thought of it either, and now
it hit me today.
Yeah,
it hit me today. It's the guitars, right? I mean, it's the guitar sound. It's very, and I was thinking of the timeline, right? This came out in '94, not Korn self-titled. Well, that was the same time frame. But if I think about Follow the Leader era, Korn, I can hear elements of Black Hole Sun, instrumentals, not vocals, instrumentals.
Damn, I like that. I hadn't thought of that either.
The nerd brain went off earlier today.
I love it. And I'd be so interested to for you or for any of us to ask that question directly, because the answer might be very much so 100%.
Maybe down the line, you never know. Hey guys, if you're listening, Korn. Korn 1, if you're listening, we're ready.